Just remember that the false ego has only one desire: to become greater and more powerful than the true self.
The false ego, or the false self, intends to fulfill this desire by imitating the holistic realm of the selfless self. When possible, such an imitation will result in the creation of a pseudo-holistic system, like, for example, the monetary system. In order to fully understand the game plan of the agents of the false self, it is important to comprehend the term unus mundus. The term unus mundus is Latin for one world, and is founded on the assumption that the multiplicity of the empirical world rests on an underlying unity. Everything divided and different, therefore, belongs to one and the same world. The Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung popularized the term unus mundus by relating it to his concepts of archetype and synchronicity. Archetypes, according to Jung, are a universal and recurring image, pattern, or motif representing a typical human experience. Archetypes therefore occur as a result of our experience of the unus mundus. That is to say, during a certain human experience, the unus mundus collapses into archetypes. Synchronicity refers to a meaningful coincidence. The idea behind synchronicity is that both the observer and the connected incident ultimately emanate from the same source. In other words, synchronicity is a human experience which reveals the dynamics of the unus mundus. So in order to be able to imitate the holistic realm of the selfless self, the agents of the false self have to be able to imitate both the archetypical images and synchronicity. The task of the agents is therefore twofold. Firstly, their task is to solidify the archetypal images which are being projected onto the collective consciousness by means of manipulating human experience. This idea becomes more definite once each archetypal image has been singled out from the whole pantheon of archetypes that lies embedded in our collective unconsciousness. So let's take a look. The archetype child is reflected by our longing for innocence, and this is manifested by our denial of all possible forms of conspiracy. We, the people, caught in yet another crisis, represent the archetype damsel in distress. The archetype martyr is solidified by the brave patriots that give away their lives for a higher cause, but also by the innocent victims of such things as terror attacks. The education system shaping our minds, telling us what and how to think, substitutes the archetype mentor. Shocking news reported by the mainstream media functions as a substitute for the archetype scarecrow. Homeland Security, intending to defend the country against apparent threats, acts as the archetype wise old man. The military force or any other force declaring war on somebody or something acts as the archetype warrior. The welfare state with its social benefits and social services substitutes the archetype great mother. The banks act as the archetype trickster because they consider their debts as assets and generate money from them, whereas the central banks have mastered trickery to the point that they can create money out of nothing. The government, which has the power to introduce laws, may be seen as a substitute for the archetype Skyfather. The axis of evil which gives birth to terror attacks acts as the archetype Satan or the devil. And the elected leader may be seen as a substitute for the archetype hero. He or she is the chosen one and is supposed to guide the people. The agents of the false self will therefore have to provide the common herd with certain typical experiences, but also make sure that these experiences keep on recurring. Accordingly, these typical experiences are denial of conspiracy, another crisis, brave patriots and innocent citizens sacrificed for a higher cause, being told how and what to think, shocking mainstream news, defense against apparent threats, another war declared against somebody or something, social benefits and social services, money out of debt and money out of nothing, the introduction of new laws, terror attacks, and guidance provided by the elected leader. The more frequently these typical experiences are imposed upon the masses, the more one can suspect that it's actually the agents of the false self, reinforcing the collective archetypal images in order to keep the herd trapped within the realm of opposites. And secondly, the task of the agents of the false self is to exploit incidents in such a way that they give rise to the dynamics of combining the collective archetypal images into a coherent whole. For example, the so-called opportunity provided by the September 11th terror attacks remolds the collective archetypal images closer to a global unity. This global unity tends to create an image of the false self on a global scale. Nevertheless, this global unity is only an imitation of the unus mundus. This is why it appears that most scientific, economic, political, and religious organizations are being controlled by a hand behind the curtain. This is also why all the significant incidents in the world appear to be manipulated by that same hand. The agents of the false self give form to the archetypical images and project them onto the collective consciousness. Then they exploit significant incidents as a means of reshaping and enhancing these images. This process is quite similar to the animation technique used in making cartoons, and it results in the illusion that the archetypal images, which are being projected onto the collective consciousness, are alive and kicking. It all gives rise to a Mickey Mouse reality, while the cartoon that is being presented to us tends to evolve towards an imitation of the whole initiation process, as described by Joseph Campbell, and thus is a kind of pseudo-initiation. The full initiation process of the false self would more or less look something like this. The road of trials would be completed with the implementation of pseudo-holistic systems on a global scale, for all domains of the human psyche that can be completely detached from reality. For those aspects of life that cannot be detached from reality, like natural phenomena, the agents of the false self will need to implement and enforce conventional methods to distract people from perceiving the world in a holistic way. The meeting with the goddess is the experience of a love that has the power and significance of the all-powerful, all-encompassing, unconditional love that a fortunate infant may experience with his or her mother. With respect to the initiation of the false self, this experience is expressed collectively by our worshipping of Mother Earth, or Gaia, which is slowly taking form with the implementation of Agenda 21. Woman as the temptress reflects the temptations we face that may lead us to abandon or stray from the path, which does not necessarily have to be represented by a woman. Here, for example, the increasing amount of conspiracy theories that all point towards a controlling hand behind the curtain may tempt us to follow a different pathway than the one offered to us by the agents of the false self. Of course, these agents would never tolerate conspiracy theories and deem them outrageous. Atonement with the Father is the confrontation and initiation by whatever holds the ultimate power. In the case of the false self, it means complete faith in the New World Order, while completely surrendering all possible forms of self-defense to the controlling elite, who will in turn guarantee to protect the defenseless herd against all possible threats. It is a 24/7 ruling of the male principle over the female principle, a permanent veil covering all openness. The apotheosis is a state of divine knowledge, love, compassion, and bliss. For the individuals that uphold the false self, this will occur once they surrender to the one world government, which includes a one world currency, a one world army, and a one world religion. And the ultimate boon is the achievement or the goal of the quest. It is what the person went on the journey in order to get. For the false self, the ultimate boon is absolute power, yet this is only released on the duly proven, who occupy the invisible centers of control. Nevertheless, the whole notion of the false self versus the true self is an idea that relates to the realm of opposites, which is imposed upon us by the false self. The true self, on the other hand, is aware that the false self and the true self are interconnected and interdependent. That is, they complement each other and represent the selfish self and the unselfish self, respectively. While the nature of the false self is to outgrow the true self, the nature of the true self is to pacify the false self. The true self has the capacity to completely pacify the false self, and when such a pacification takes place, the realm of opposites vanishes. The challenge for the hero on a collective level is to make sure that the zeitgeist moves forward and continues its journey. This journey appears to be mapped out by Joseph Campbell in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Accordingly, the whereabouts of the present-day hero on a collective level is found in the favorite phase of the myth adventure, called the Road of Trials. On the Road of Trials, the hero will face the third task, which in this case means to master an understanding of the holistic realm of perception. This task can only be fulfilled if one stops gravitating towards the so-called conventional methods and pseudo-holistic systems presented by the agents of the false self, who intend to bully the herd into the realm of perceiving opposites. The realm of perceiving opposites is what perpetuates an inner divorce within us. This inner divorce, the splitting of the psyche, is the root cause that allows humanity to be divided up into opposing camps, and it prolongs our divorce from Mother Nature. Instead, one should try to heal this schism by realizing the underlying union of opposites provided by the full spectrum of the holistic realm. A call for a paradigm shift is more and more heard these days, though few realize the origin of this term. The term was coined by Thomas Kuhn in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn wrote that a paradigm shift is a melange of sociology, enthusiasm, and scientific promise. Could there be a more peaceful way of backing up a nonviolent revolution of consciousness than with the scientific revolution?